Welcome back to another episode of Tech Talks with Santosh. And today we have a very special guest, Wassim, who is joining us. Thanks a lot for joining us, Wassim.
Thank you for inviting me again to your show.
Yeah. Yeah. So today we are going to talk about Azure Static Web Apps and a new CLI tool, which I'm sure you might have seen on Twitter. It's recently launched, and Wasim is going to talk about the same. So over to you, Wasim. So would you like to introduce yourself first?
Yeah, I have some slides about myself
Yeah, sure.
afterwards. But yeah, hi, I'm Wassim, and this talk is about Azure Static Web Apps, our new service to deploy your Jamstack, static content, web framework, static site generated application on Azure. And before that, actually, I want to just give you a quick history about the web and where we come from. So, of course, obviously, we started with the Web 1.0, basic HTML, like really static HTML with simple forms. And that's what I call the era of CGI or Common Gateway Interfaces. So for those who experienced that this era, you might be familiar with this kind of code. So usually you had some Perl on the backend, which generate this static content, HTML content, really simply and easily. And then the browser gets this HTML and just render it like really simple. And whenever you want to interact back with the backend, you had this action and which point to the CGI script, again, the Perl one. And then Perl gets that content, processes the user's input, information, whatever they have, and then prints back the response. So that's basically a request response kind of paradigm that we had earlier, where the browser requests a static content from the server, and then you had to refresh the page and get back that content from the server. And then Web 2.0, that's when I started my developer career. That's you have like this nice UI, fancy buttons and fancy design. And fun fact, this was my first website I've ever created. So it's in French, but the topic was about quantum computing. That's the topic I was really interested in back then. So yeah, that's was my first website. Don't try to go to the URL because it's already closed for like maybe like 7 years now, and I can't find the source code. But the most interesting part of this Web 2.0 was the introduction of Ajax and single page application. So Ajax was not a new technology in this area. It was a kind of old technology, by the way, created by Microsoft and introduced in Internet Explorer. But basically, what Ajax allowed us is to simply interact with the web page and fetch some data without refreshing the website, without refreshing the page. So that was a huge improvements in user experience. Here it's, I believe it was the first use case of this Ajax, a single page app, which is Google Maps. So that was a really like new paradigm back then. Again, single page apps, you send your static content, your application to the browser, and whenever you have any interaction with the backend, with the server, you would just use Ajax or JavaScript to request those and fetch those JSON or buffer or data or whatever content you want from the server. And now we had in between the current web and Web 2.0, we had this Web 3.0, which was quickly described, as the web of data. That's the term that was introduced by Sir Tim Berners-Lee, I guess, if I'm not wrong. And basically, it was to promote semantic web and the ability to expose data and allow machine-to-machine communication. Things like RDF, like resource description framework, I think, RSS, all the stuff. And now we have the we have the current web. And before that, welcome to this talk about the new era of static web apps, as I call it. My name is Wassim Shigam. I work at Microsoft as a senior cloud advocate specialized in JavaScript and developer tools. You can find me on Twitter. I tweet a lot about open source, about web technologies, about IoT, about anything that's related to JavaScript. And if you have any questions, just ping me or DM me. My DMs are open, so you don't need to follow me there. So the new era of static web apps. Um, so what is a static web app actually? You've been hearing me talk about this, and you probably have heard about this on the internet. So to me, my definition is a static web app is a traditional single page application written with any web framework
Hmm.
with a little bit of superpowers. So it's fast to load. Um, it's fast to render because it's
Uh, I'm not sure. Wasim, your voice is really low,
is it really low?
or is it my mic? Can you say something?
What about now?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. So yeah, it's a single page app that has some like secret powers. It's fast to load, fast to use, and basically fast to render. So
Hmm.
and fast to allows the user to quickly interact with your app and reduce that time to interactive metric. And also
Right.
optionally, you can have some serverless backend that you can use. So that's basically you could use any of your favorite web framework or static site generator tool like Angular, Scully, Gatsby, all those cool stuff,
Yep.
or just HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Like in the old time. um, this is the simple architecture of this new paradigm, or like excuse me, the modern paradigm because it's not new. So you
Hmm.
have the browser uses Ajax, as we saw, single page app, classic stuff. Fetch a serverless API to get data. Static
Hmm.
content is being fetched from a remote CDN with all the cool features like caching and also being really near your users, and also accessing all the database resources and whatever you have on the backend through those serverless APIs. It's really simple. So this is how Azure Static Web Apps is basically built without going into more like a lot of details here. So Azure Static Web Apps is a new service that allows you to, um, as a developer, focus on your code, and this service will take care of the like building and hosting your static web app. It also gives you some nice features like built-in authorization and authentication mechanisms that you could use really simply, and I'll demonstrate those. And optionally, you can hook it a Azure Functions serverless API if you want to access your backend. It would also, the Azure Static Web Apps would automatically detect that and build your serverless API for you, as well as
Oh.
the front end. It automatically configures your CI/CD. So if you're
Hmm.
using DevOps, Azure DevOps, or GitHub Actions, it will configure that GitHub action for you on GitHub, for instance. So it would watches all the changes that you have either on your PRs or your main branch, and then redeploy and build and host your static content. Custom domains and free SSL are also part of the service. So if you have your fancy example.com domain, you could use it. Otherwise, Azure Static Web Apps would give you a uh, default free, subdomain on the official Azure Static Web Apps
Oh,
domain, and it also geo-distributed because it's tries to caches all the static content in many different regions on the globe. So Azure Static Web Apps, or SWA as I call it, because it's it's quicker to pronounce. So SWA support um, some of the major auth providers like Azure Active Directory, GitHub, Google, Twitter, Facebook, and there are more coming in the future. The basic flow for Azure Static Web App is the follow. So you have you, the developer, writing your code and pushing your changes to your Git repository. Um, you could use either GitHub or Azure pipelines for that. So we currently, initially when we started last
Mhm.
May, we only supported GitHub Actions. Now we are also supporting Azure DevOps with Azure pipelines. And then the magic happens there. We build your backend, your front end, and package them and deploy them on the cloud on Azure. And also, you get this nice auth feature as well. Then you have your secure website live. The overall architecture of the Azure Static Web Apps looks like the following. So you have your website. Whenever you access your website from your browser, obviously, we request all the static content from a some sort, of a geo-distributed storage near your users. You have your serverless API if you're using one. Otherwise, you would only have like a web app with no backend. Of course, you can request any remote resource. You don't have to use a serverless API. You can access all the cool Azure services on the backend, and there is also built-in auth a mechanism that you could use, and all auth with forward the auth process to the different providers that we currently support. So this part is deployed on Azure, so you have access to all Azure coolness. When it comes to developer tools, of course, you can access from the portal. That was one of the first ways where you can deploy and configure your SWA application. We also now support GitHub, a VS Code extension. There is the official Azure CLI. And now we're also announcing the Static Web Apps CLI,
Yeah.
which is was announced yesterday, by the way.
Yeah, I saw that.
So yes, and so from VS Code, you would have the classic VS Code workflow with all the essential command that allows you to configure, deploy, and access your Static Web Apps resource. From the portal, we also have this nice feature where we have presets for the major web frameworks like Angular, React Vue, Blazor, all the stuff. Otherwise, you would just provide a custom configuration if you want. And we also now support the CLI which has some nice features. Like, for instance, a local auth emulation and serving your Azure Functions serverless API. Wow, that's tough to say. And of course, serving your static content. So demo time. I think I was super quick, but that was done on purpose. So the first,
Yeah.
I have lots of demos for you.
Yep. So
So
before
the
we
first,
go ahead with demo, Lars has a question. So his
yep.
question is: does Azure Static Web Apps auth support Azure AD B2C?
I don't have any information about B2C, but I know that we support the major auth providers that I showed, and we will also be supporting OpenID in the future.
Oh, okay. Cool.
So the first demo I have here is the use of Azure Static CLI that I'm working on. For that, I need to switch to my command line. So here I have this shop at home app that John Papa has built. That's the same app he built with Svelte, React Vue, and Angular. Here I'm using the Angular version. So I've already built the app, ng build dash prod or npm run build. So already have app ready here. Now what I want to do as I'm working on an app, I want to test it locally before, I would try it locally before deploying to prod, to Azure Static Web Apps. So I'm using this global static web apps CLI tool. I want to start the server, and then I can give it the folder where the static content is available.
Mhm.
I can also provide an API backend because this app has also a mocked API that John is providing, and it's located in the folder that's called API in the same directory here. So now I'm running the local server, and you can see my app. My static web app is available at this local address. I can probably try this one. Okay, so it's open the app here on my other screen. So let me grab it here. Okay. So this is the app running locally in my Angular app. Uh, so excuse me, I was already logged in. So the app allows you to, request some shopping list and run some basic CRUD operations on your shopping list. So now I'm not logged in. So if I want to access my shopping list, it's forbidden because I have no session. So I can use, for instance, I want to try login with Twitter. So when I click on Twitter, I have this page, and this page only shows locally on my machine. If you're using the same app on production, you will go through the real world Twitter authentication process, or GitHub, or Facebook, or whatever provider you set up. But locally, we don't want to support that. We just like fake that information and allows you to quickly, reference some information. So here I have, it detects that I'm using Twitter. It generates a random user ID. I've already saved my username before, but what you can reference whatever you have here. And you can also set up some rules for your ACL permissions, where you have like only this route is accessed by some certain rules, or this route is forbidden for, I don't know, for
Right.
anonymous users or stuff like that. So you can use those. The CLI
Oh,
also support that. So log in, and then here I'm logged in with Wassim, my Twitter, and then I have my local API content. And as you can see from the CLI, I have all the logs showing here. So other than that, I mean, I'm not going to demonstrate how to use a CRUD. So that's outside of the CLI work.
yeah.
But something that I didn't mention actually is with Azure Static Web Apps, you also can provide a configuration file where you want to, for instance, restrict access to some routes, or you want to allow fallback navigation. For instance, if you see here, I'm on the products page, and that's an Angular app, and it's using the default Angular router configuration, which is a pushback history push configuration, not the hash one. So if I
Yeah.
refresh, I can still access my app. I mean, if you do this with a random static server, you would fail because you don't have any
Right.
server configuration on the server that allow fallback. So John has provided that configuration, and the CLI understand this configuration and allows you to still access your app. I'm going to show you that what an example of that configuration in my next demo. Also, John has set up that if you want to access Google Auth, you would see a 404 page. And this CLI, this is what shows you as well. He has restricted access to login with GitHub because he decided to do that. So now let's maybe switch to our next demo. Let me stop the CLI here.
So meanwhile, there is a question from Salim. So
Yes.
his question is, if my Angular app has a node as middleware, can I say I can move the logic to Azure function and move the app to Azure Static Web App?
Node as middleware.
I mean, node as middleware. I mean, you have, looks like he's talking about node as as API, right? So he's using
Yeah, I mean,
probably.
if your app is using a backend, like a backend provider or like data provider from a backend, uh, in this case, you can use either Azure Functions if you want to have all these serverless features, or if you have your own Express Node.js or HTTP Node.js running somewhere and you have the URL, you could just use that. There is no need to, yeah. So here he's mentioning middleware. So I guess he's talking
Yeah.
about Express.
Yeah. Actually, looks like.
Yep. All right. So here my next application is.
Mm-hmm.
It's an app actually I created last Sunday. It's a playground for static web apps.
Oh, wow.
And I believe that's the first show I'm going to show it off. So this is exclusive for you, Santosh.
Thank you.
So it's an Angular app
Mm-hmm.
that allows you to visualize and test your static web app configuration file, and probably will add more features in the future. So now I need to find a configuration file. So I'm going to drag and drop one here from my desktop. So I have so okay, let me show you the one that I was using for John's shop at home application.
Mm-hmm.
Um, or maybe I'm going to use one which is one which like a new I mean a new configuration file which has more how to say more rules and more
Mm-hmm.
static. Okay, that's the one. So I'm gonna just like drag and drop it here, and bam. So I have so the app detect that I have 12 routes rules for my application. For instance, wherever I
Mm-hmm.
hit redirect slash 301, then respond with status code 301 and redirect to index2-html. And we have lots of rules like that. Like for instance, for any route that matches a anything followed by a JPEG extension would redirect to JPEG HTML and so forth, and stuff like that. You can also like override headers, like add ABC to all these routes and things like that. And we also have like fallback routes. So that's what I told about for Angular. So here
Mm-hmm.
we're saying serve index HTML for every request except for request that ends with txt. That's like a basic example. And also for all the requests, you have to add the header A with the value B in that example. So the SWA playground here allows me, for
Mm-hmm.
instance, to try. Okay, I wanna see if I can access if there is any route that matches redirect 301. It says yes, this matches my route, and it gives me the headers that's gonna be applied, and the headers of the response that's gonna be sent. I can, for instance, try. Okay, so foo dot Google. Okay, that's one matches. So I'm gonna redirect to a Google website and with status code of 200, because that's the default one. And I'm also able to, for instance. Okay, so I don't see any route here that has
Okay.
ACL.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but if I had one, I could try. Okay, I want to get a route, and
Mm-hmm.
here are the rules that I am providing. So if there is any route that matches this one, tell me. Otherwise, I might be have a wrong configuration. So if you're not familiar with that, if you're not happy with this UI, you
Mm-hmm.
could also still access the advanced mode where you have this editor where you can change or add more routes. Like for instance, okay, let me copy this one, and I'm going to add, and it's adding live there. So if I have a route called foo, um, I think it's called allowed roles. And excuse me if that's not the the correct. So we have love validation there. Let's say okay. Oh, that's JSON, which is double quotes. Okay. So I added this new route here.
Mm-hmm.
So it's showing that here. So now I can test. Okay. If I access foo, no route had matched because this one needs the admin role. So okay, let me add admin, and boom, it matches that role. So this route would only be accessed by anyone who has admin route. Excuse me,
Oh,
admin role. Anyway, so that's a really quick prototype of this static web app playground. I'll probably tweet about it later on if you want to like contribute or try it out with your app. Okay, let's move on really quick. Where is my mouse? All right. So this is like another like real not real but I mean classic web app written again in Angular. So if you know me, I write everything in Angular. So this allows me to connect with my GitHub account and show me a nice card with all my stats, my GitHub stats. So I click login, and it's running in production. So that's why it's using the real GitHub API. And now it gets my credentials. It shows me a real stats here. One thing I want to show you here, this app has an Easter egg. So if let me log out. If I hit shift on my keyboard, you see that orange square there changed on the login. Okay,
Yeah.
so now refresh my page. And if I try to log in again, now it's using Auth0 as my login provider. Whereas before it was using GitHub, directly GitHub. So I'm using Auth0 login with my GitHub accounts, and obviously I have the same experience. So yeah, that's GitHub badge, that static web that app if you wanna check it out. I think it's already open source, so you can access the code if you want. And the last app is the Catsify, which is really a very old app I've built like maybe last May. It's basically an Angular app that allows you to generate funny names for your cats if you're like lacking some creativity and we're like looking for names. So you hit the give me button and it gives you a random name whenever the app is ready. Okay, let's try it again. Live demo. Okay, now. So outstanding Mimi, for instance, that's a cute name. If you like it, you can just tweet it, and yeah, let me know if you like it. So the interesting part about this specific app is, so the front end is Angular, classic Angular. The backend, however, is written in Rust and is compiled to WebAssembly, and the whole app is built with Bazel. So there's a lot of buzzwords there, and that's on purpose. Like, that's really a real-world application. I mean, forget about the use case. It's like a really simple, funny use case. But if you have like a shopping app or whatever interesting, like really business application, but on the back end you have all this different stacks that you want to build and use in different build step and everything, you could still do that and deploy it on Azure Static Web Apps. Again, if you have questions about this specific app, it's open source. I can share the link with you if you want to see how configuration everything is done. And I think that's all. I am planning on publishing this blog post, how to deploy your Scully app on Azure Static Web Apps. The Scully part has already been approved by Sounder, so thank you, Sounder, for that. I'm just missing, the Static Web Apps part that I need to write because, had some nice screenshots and all the stuff. And that's it. So I've added all the links in these slides. I will be sharing the slides later on. So if you want to try, we have like documentation about how to publish your web framework on Azure Static Web Apps, how to use the CLI, and there are other free interesting resources as well. If you like the CLI, please subscribe. I mean, give a start to the GitHub project. Subscribe to the notifications so that you can get all the latest work that we're doing and updates, because we are still working on the CLI. We announced it yesterday, but we also have more features coming. So please subscribe to the GitHub project if you're interested by this tool. And yeah, shout out to my GitHub sponsors. I know Santosh is one of them, so thank you so much. Also, if you care about our planet, you could create an account on Ecology to help plant trees and leave a healthier planet for our children. Or if you don't want to create an account and subscribe, you could just sponsor my account there and help me plant more and more trees on this planet. So that was all for me. I know I was talking super fast, but I just want to be on time, to keep on time.
Nice.
So yeah, check me out on Twitter at Manikineko if you have more any question or you want to know more about anything JavaScript and Angular, of course.
Cool.
I thank you, and that's all for me. Now, I'm listening for questions. If there are any
Yeah,
or
I
feedback
think
or
there are not any questions in chat, but I do have some questions. So, first question is: do I need to have Azure account to actually try static web apps?
I mean, yes, like any other Azure service, you have to have an account
Mm-hmm.
to use it.
Okay.
Yes.
And is it paid or free? So,
So, I mean, obviously it's paid, but I have a link here. There is here, like free Azure accounts. You can click on that links to get a 12-month trial for free. You can try all the
mm-hmm.
services. Um,
Okay.
However, what I didn't mention is like Azure Static Web Apps now is free. So there's a free tier that you can use. However,
Okay.
I mean, you still need to have an Azure account to access the service or access all the Azure services.
Right.
But Azure Static Web Apps, specifically for now during the preview period,
Mm-hmm.
has and I think maybe in the future as well, will have a free plan, have a free tier that you could use.
Okay.
So yeah,
So,
go ahead, try it. Yeah.
cool. So, is there any plan to make it like free for open source, or
I
is it
don't know
already?
about that. That's something that maybe the team will going
Uh-huh.
to announce when they announce publicly the product.
Oh, that's cool. Okay. And to try this CLI, do we need to actually mention some Azure credentials or somewhere, or do I need
Do
to
we have
connect
to mention?
to Azure?
Can you
So
say that again?
while using the CLI, the
Yes.
SWA CLI which you have created, so do I need to connect it to Azure account, or it's like it's
No.
local? So no,
No,
it's not.
it's standalone. It's local. It doesn't access any service. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Other than if you have an Azure Function API, serverless API, so the SWA CLI will just start the Func CLI. If you're familiar with the Func CLI,
Mm-hmm.
that's all. Func CLI is the CLI for Azure Functions. I
Ah,
know
okay.
there is a lot of CLIs. um, but Azure Static Web Apps CLI is a standalone. You don't have to have any Azure account or whatever because it's starting all locally
Mm-hmm.
on your machine.
That's great. So I think that this will be the last question from my side, probably. So it can work with NX DevTools as well. Is or have you ever tried to do that?
With what
And,
tools?
and NX DevTools, can it work for with NX monorepo?
Oh, with NX.
Yep.
I mean, yeah, because Static Web Apps CLI it's independent from your dev server or whatever tool you have, because you will have to, I mean, you will if you're using NX, you would use NX to build your Angular app or your monorepo
Right.
into a dist folder. So Static Web Apps can only access this dist folder. However, I can demo that if you want afterwards. If you have a Angular dev server running somewhere on your default port 4200 with NX or whatever, you can start the SWA CLI, and instead of giving it the dist folder, you can give it the URL of the dev server, and it will automatically connect on that. This would like, for instance, like the excuse me. Okay, here. So let's say so here I'm inside an Angular app, so I can say okay, npm start. It's gonna start my local Angular dev server, and at the same time, I can. Okay, I'm waiting for the dev server to run. I can say okay, SWA start HTTP and you can see that I already have a history completion there. I don't care about the API for now. So I can give it this context. Okay, run from this port. So now it's gonna try to detect if it's the port is running. So it's running, and it gives me
Mhm.
this URL, and it says, okay, using dev server, this one. And again, this way I can still use. I can still work on my Angular app.
Mhm.
Implement features and everything, and have all the live reload, all the debugging stuff on there. And at the same time, I can use the SWAT CLI to have access to the routing configuration, authentication, ACL, all this cool stuff that I have.
Oh, that's cool.
And you can do also the same. Excuse me. As you can see from my history here, you could use also the same thing for the API. If you have a API running somewhere, you can do the
Uh,
same thing.
oh, that's nice.
Um, so yeah, um, that's the story for Azure Static Web Apps currently.
That's
I
nice.
hope
I
you
mean,
like the CLI.
so I have to try it out. So probably I'll go
Yeah,
through it.
please feel free to try it out. And let me know about if there's any missing feature,
Mhm.
or if there is some issues with starting the framework. The CLI has also some other features I didn't mention. Like for instance, it can build your app. If you say, okay, swa start dash dash build, it will
Mhm.
automatically build your Angular app before starting the server, because static web apps runs on a already built. It needs static content generated for you. So you have either you can do it manually beforehand,
Mhm.
or you could just do it with the same command.
Oh, that's cool.
Yep. And in the future, there's also some user stories about integrating the CLI with the VS Code extension. So you could only use the VS Code extension and instrument the Azure Static Web Apps CLI under the hood.
That's cool.
If you are more into UI stuff.
Mhm. So I've started using CLI more now.
CLIs are
Ah,
fun.
yeah.
I think,
So
yeah,
I
I mean,
feel, yeah.
I feel like I've been building CLIs for the last 5 years with Node, specifically. It's really, really fun to build. I mean, this one is my like a recent one, but I had other cool stuff like the Hexa CLI I already built last year, which is also for to do stuff with Azure. But again, that's another talk for another day maybe.
Sure,
But yeah,
sure.
CLIs are fun.
I mean, a Node has actually made it a lot easier to actually implement. Before that, I mean, I have no idea how to build a CLI, but of course, Node.js made it a lot easier.
Yeah, and it's also really interesting when you build it with the vanilla Node.js, if I may say, like without packages or anything. If you want to have like a lightweight CLI package to deploy, I
Wow.
mean, you can still do it. But yeah, I mean, we can talk about CLIs another time. it's
Sure,
it's a
sure. I
whole
think
it's a
that
whole world. Yep.
yeah, that will be really interesting. Yep. So I think that's it. We don't have any questions on the chat. So thanks a lot for joining, Wasim. And
Thank you.
in case you want to promote anything on the channel, I think apart from what.
Um, I'm really bad at promotion, but if there's anything I want to promote, that would be this
Mhm.
ecology either profile page, if you want. Again, as I say, because this ecology requires you to have a monthly subscription. So either you could like subscribe and help plant trees, or if you don't wanna like have a monthly subscription, you can sponsor my account there. And
Uh-huh.
also, what I didn't mention is all the sponsors from my GitHub sponsors page. So all the sponsorship, excuse me, like half of the sponsorship allows me to pay for this uh, ecology account, and the other half would also are paying for services for cloud stuff and all the other thing. So that's what what I'm trying to say here. And yeah, also again the CLI page, because I'm really excited about this project. I've been working on this like for the last 6 months,
Mhm.
so it would mean a lot for my team and myself to have your support on the project.
That's good.
Yeah, and that's all for me.
Cool. Thanks everyone for joining us today. And tomorrow we are going to have another episode with Shruti. She will be joining us to talk about GraphQL, and she works at PayPal. So I actually met her by, of course, Twitter because it's been more than a year. We just can't leave our houses.
She's amazing.
So
Yeah.
yeah, actually, yeah, she is. So we will talk about GraphQL. So in case you are interested, join us and come with questions in case you have any. I'm really excited about GraphQL. So let's see you tomorrow, 10 p.m. IST, and then we will have a few more talks next week. That's for tomorrow. Yep. And in case you want to see me live coding, I have also started streaming on Twitch. So you can just go to Twitch and /Santosh Yadav Dev. The handle
Subscribe.
remains same. So you can just follow there, and I'll be soon actually live streaming the entire Angular basic course which I was working on. So in case you have anyone who wants to actually learn about Angular, ask him to actually come to Twitch and come with the questions in case you have any. I'll announce it soon what will be the time, because I have to, of course, fix the timing as well. So that's it for the day, and see you. Bye bye everyone.
Bye.